is Pastor Trish. It is Monday, July 20th. And after a week off of a little bit of relaxation, we will pick up where we left off and we begin this evening with Psalm 35. This psalm is a plea for help, a plea for rescue, and it uses, particularly in the beginning, some metaphors of waging battle. And so it talks about enemies and winning against the enemies and those doing judgment against those who might harm. But we don't really know who those enemies are at the beginning. At first, they seem to be unknown, and then it moves into a talk about trust of God, trusting in God, which we have heard as a familiar refrain in all of the Psalms. And then it moves back into doing battle again, but we begin to discover perhaps those that the psalmist is talking about are people who are well known to him or her. Not kind of a faceless enemy, but perhaps friends who acted like they were friends and then have turned against them when things didn't go right, those kinds of situations. It's interesting because a week or so ago, as I was wrapping up, I decided not to do this psalm on that Friday. It just seemed like a real heavy psalm and not it just seemed like a hard song, and so we had ended our last amount of time together with something from Isaiah. And so I returned now to this psalm, and gosh, in so many ways it seems so fitting for what we are all battling right now. I don't know about you, but I do know, I'm guessing that you feel like me in that the world is so heavy these days and there is so much battling going on and so much fighting and division. And it's so easy for me to blame that on the people that with whom I disagree. But the reality is I'm in that too. Every time I disagree with someone and roll my eyes or make a snarky comment back or talk about it to somebody else who I know agrees with me, or all those kinds of things. I'm just sowing those seeds of division as well. And so, as it talks about doing battle, um, I think about the battle that we are waging with one another when we should be waging the battle against this pandemic with each other, right? Rather than against each other and all of the consequences as a result of this virus. We should be trying to work together to defeat it and to restore our economy and to do what we think is best for one another. And instead, maybe I'm just preaching to myself. Instead, we are seeming to battle one another. And I think this psalm, in many ways, talks about that. So I'm going to pray the first 18 verses of the psalm. It's actually a very long psalm, it goes for 28 verses. I'm only going to read the first 18. You're going to hear that battle. You're going to hear a cry of trusting God, back to the difficulties and the places where people are not getting along, and then we'll end again with a call for help from God. And then I just want to close with a quote from someone about what this psalm means and how it's both good news and bad news, really, for us. Or perhaps bad news and good news is the way to talk about it. So please join me as we pray together the first part of Psalm 35. Lord, argue with those who argue with me, fight with those who fight against me. Grab a shield and armor, stand up and help me. Use your spear and axe against those who are out to get me. Say to me, I'm your salvation. Let those who want me dead be humiliated and put to shame. Let those who intend to hurt me be thoroughly frustrated and disgraced. Let them be like dust on the wind, and let the Lord's messenger be the one who does the blowing. Let their path be dark and slippery, and let the Lord's messenger be the one who does the chasing. Because they hid their net from me for no reason. They dug a pit for me for no reason. Let disaster come to them when they don't suspect it. Let the net they hide catch them instead. Let them fall into it to their disaster. Pretty harsh kinds of words, right? And it goes on. But I will rejoice in the Lord. I will celebrate his salvation, and all my bones will say, Lord, who could compare to you? You rescue the weak from those who overpower them. You rescue the weak and the needy from those who plunder them. Violent witnesses stand up and they question me about things I know nothing about. They pay me back evil for good, leaving me stricken with grief. For when they were sick, I wore clothes for grieving, and I kept a strict fast. And when my prayer came back unanswered, I would wander around like I was grieving a friend or a brother. I was weighed down, sad, like I was a mother in mourning. But when I stumbled, they celebrated and gathered together. They gathered together against me. Strangers I didn't know tore me to pieces and wouldn't quit. They ridiculed me over and over again, like godless people would do, grinding their teeth at me. How long, my Lord, will you watch this happen? Rescue me from their attacks. Rescue my precious life from their predatory lions. Then I will thank you in the great assembly, and I will praise you in a huge crowd of people. And so we hear the psalmist talking about the wrong being done to him or her, asking God to come down on the side of the poor and the weak and the needy from those who overpower, to do judgment against those who are doing wrong. A commentary, Beth Tanner talks about this psalm and she says this prayer is both brave and dangerous. It's brave because it calls on God to stand up and to do battle with the powers that harm. And it is brave because it also dares to ask God to come and judge all who are involved in the conflict. And it is dangerous for those same reasons. It is easy for us to assume we are always in the wrong, or excuse me, we are always in the right, and ask God to come and do judgment upon those whom we believe are harming us or harming others or doing things wrong. And it's difficult for us to believe that we might ourselves be in the wrong and we too might be causing as much harm as we see those with whom we disagree causing harm. Like I said, hard words tonight, but perhaps important words for all of us to remember. The other part to remember is that all of that work of judgment and taking care of those things, that's God's work. We are invited into that work, but we have to remember it's first and foremost God's work, done in God's way and in God's time and not our own. I think of that as the third way, a way of not your way or my way, but God's way. And so tonight I pray that all of us will seek to discern God's way in all of this. It's been nice to be back with you again, and we will see you tomorrow.